Well, the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Hobart, Julian Porteous, rose to national prominence in 2015 when a transgender activist, Martine Delaney, a man who identifies as a woman, sued him in the Tasmanian Anti-Discrimination Commission for distributing a booklet to Catholics explaining Catholic teaching on marriage. The booklet was entitled Don't Mess with Marriage. It had been produced by the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference and was a beautiful and clear enunciation of Christian teaching on marriage and why it should be preserved in law and promoted in culture. This case shocked Australians who never thought legal action would be taken against a Christian minister for teaching a view on marriage which most people at the time found uncontroversial and probably still do find uncontroversial. Now, when it started to derail the activist campaign to redefine marriage in the lead up to the 2017 same-sex marriage plebiscite, the case was quietly dropped. Archbishop Porteous was again in the national spotlight just before Easter, intervening in the Albanese government's attack on Christian schools, which threatens the very existence of the sector. Archbishop Porteous joins us now. Archbishop, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. Before we get into the latest attack on religious freedom, are you surprised that almost 9 years on, the Tasmanian anti-discrimination laws, which saw you hauled before a tribunal, remain in place?
I am, because I do believe that these laws are inadequate in terms of respecting freedom of speech in particular. In my own case, I think the thing that was uncertain in the end was, yes, the case was dropped by the complainant, and yet there was no resolution. So I was always wondering whether the next day somebody else would make the same claims against the distribution of the booklet. So in a way, there is still uncertainty, really, for everybody in Tasmania concerning their freedom, their right to be able to express their views on social and moral matters and not find themselves brought before the Anti-Discrimination Commissioner.
Yeah, and of course similar laws apply in pretty much every other state of Australia and also federally. Why do you think politicians are so paralysed when it comes to defending freedom of speech? I mean, it would be a fairly simple amendment to the law to allow freedom of speech to continue to exist in this country now that this vulnerability has been exposed.
Look, I think for me, freedom of speech is vital for the democratic process. And what we're finding now is that freedom of speech is being more and more curtailed, mainly through use of anti-discrimination legislation. I think it is time in Australia that we stop and look at this whole question. The application of anti-discrimination legislation is such that it does curtail freedom of speech, which I believe is one of the most fundamental human freedoms and vital for a healthy democracy.
Well, just moving on to the issue of Christian education, which is under attack at the moment. Why do you think, and let's not beat around the bush, it's the same-sex marriage lobby now rebadged as Equality Australia. They're mounting such a strong attack on Christian schools and their freedom to choose their own staff. Why do you think they're so relentless in this attack?
Look, I think in the end, it is an ideology that wants to take complete command, really, of the culture. They are wanting to demand not only that we accept their views, but actually we abide by them. And so it's eliminating the possibility of an alternative view about the nature of the human person, nature of marriage, nature of sexuality, the nature of gender. I think it's vital at this moment in our history of Australia that there be an alternate voice to what is being driven so heavily through an ideology which is being imposed, particularly through legislation in Australia. And I think they see the Catholic and Christian schools in general as being a point of resistance, if you like, to their complete command of the culture. So I believe it's vital that the government recognise that there is an alternative view, and it is sound, it is respectful of people, but it is an alternative view about the nature of the human person, and that's what would be presented and promoted within Christian schools. So the effort to prevent schools from being able to live by what they believe and the tenets of their faith is something which I believe is of vital importance. We need to protect and preserve the freedom of our Christian schools to be able to teach and practice what we believe. Not only about the nature of God, but I think right now it's really about the nature of the human person and nature of human life.
So clearly there's a clash of worldviews. You use the term ideology. There's a clash of rights or perceived rights. And I say perceived rights because I don't think the consequences of the change to marriage and the changes to gender that these activists are seeking has been fully debated, and particularly its consequences on children. Can the clash of perceived rights be settled through a proper debate about the consequences, do you think? Or is it a case of just finding a way to accommodate these clashing rights?
Look, at the present moment, it would seem that the rights of the individual are over the rights of an organisation or a religion. I think this is a big problem. Do we just recognise and respect the rights of an individual, or do we realise that a religious body also has rights? I believe the issue too is, in a way, I'd like to move away from the idea of rights per se and really look at the question, how can we just, in Australia, in the democratic system that we have, in the culture and the traditions that we have here in Australia, recognise that religion, religious freedom, the right to give expression to religious faith is a vital element for the well-being of our society. So what we do need to see is a recognition that a person of religious faith has the right to live by and give expression to what they deeply believe.
What do you think are the consequences then if this side prevails in terms of its command and control of the culture, if religion is stamped out, the ability to put forward an alternative view on marriage and gender and sexuality and morals? What happens if those views are completely made unable to be discussed in the public square, that they are stamped out of the debate? What are the consequences for our nation of losing our religion, essentially?
I'd be deeply concerned about the future of Australia if there's not a recognition of the place of religion in the culture. I'd be very concerned that we would find that in time there would be a moral breakdown because, you know, cultures in the end need to have a spiritual base, because it's out of the spiritual base that comes the morality that is lived within the society. We can't just have law. We can't just have legislation. We can't just have the imposition of an ideology. We need to realise that the human person is a spiritual being as well as a physical being. The human person has a moral dimension to their life. This is what religion offers. Religion reminds people of the transcendent. Religion reminds people of moral ideals to live by. If religion is stamped out, particularly in public discourse in Australia, then the opportunity to, if you like, raise the quality and character of the Australian culture is, I think, going to be very seriously damaged. And I fear for what it would result in for the well-being of Australians in the future.
And that, of course, affects people regardless of whether they hold to the Christian faith or not. This has an impact across society. You've written regularly and spoken eloquently about another controversial issue, which shouldn't be controversial, but sadly it is, and that's in the defence of unborn babies, highlighting the impact on them, but also on their mothers. Like me, you're pro-life, you long for change and for our society to again fall in love with unborn babies and protect them and their mothers. What do you think is the key to seeing change in what seems to be an intractable area? Is it a case of the pro-life movement just continuing to patiently ferment the truth into our society?
Look, I think one of the things that is comes out of, again, a Christian faith is the sense of each human person is a wonderful individual creation, we would say, of God, because every person is given a soul. If, like, each person then has this extraordinary dignity as a human person. This is what the Christians would want to keep saying in this whole debate about abortion, to say, discover again the sacredness of the dignity of each individual. let's do all we can to foster and nurture a culture of life. In a way, we would probably feel we're a voice crying in the wilderness because this has advanced so much in our culture, but we can't stop saying we believe in life. We believe in the wonder of every single human being, and we want to protect and preserve human life.
Are you concerned that not more Christian leaders and political leaders speak up publicly about these issues of marriage, family and life?
Look, I think the time has come where Christians do need to step up more. I've developed a personal conviction about this. To a large extent, we've probably been lulled into a false sense of security because in times past the Christian religion was respected, was understood to have a role to play and make a contribution to the well-being of our society. We've seen, really probably in the last couple of decades, a huge cultural shift. I think the church has been a bit slow to understand the significance of this shift, to realise I think the Christian churches now are in a very different place in our society than they were, say 20 years ago. And I think we need to reposition ourselves to say, look, in our society, to a certain extent, we have to say, no, we're a minority. We're no longer the dominant influence on the culture. And so I think the place of the churches now is to be a prophetic voice, is to speak up more clearly to the issues of the day. As St Paul says, we always want to speak the truth in love to our society. But I think the time has come for us to step forward more consistently, more clearly, to say, look, we as Christians are really concerned about the well-being of our society. We have a contribution to make. We want to contribute to an understanding of how our society can develop. What are the best things for the raising of children? What are the best things to strengthen and build up marriage? What are the best things to help young people manage the complexities of issues around sexuality and gender? I believe the churches have so much to offer, and I think the time has come for us to step forward more fully and be able to express what we believe, because we believe we've got something to really contribute for the well-being of our nation.
I couldn't agree with you more. It seems to me that the church isn't well equipped to do this. This would mean a major shift in terms of the praxis of the church, getting out there in the public square, being that prophetic voice. What would need to change to give effect to the shift that you've just enunciated, that you say is necessary for us to meet the challenges of the changing environment that we now live in?
Look, I think firstly, as a religious leader, your immediate focus and attention is upon your own flock, if you like, your own people. And I think religious leaders have tended to try to care for their people as best they can. We've witnessed a whole lot of changes, and I think to a large extent we haven't been able to come to grips with what's taking place. So I believe we do need to shift. We do need to sort of see, as a religious leader, it's just not enough to be focused upon the well-being of the people that we serve as religious leaders in our own congregations and communities. To say we need to now take a position in our society and be more public in presenting to our society what we believe. Again, as I've said before, it's not just, we're not trying to impose a morality, we're not trying to impose religion. The word I like to use is we want to propose, we want to offer, because I believe we've got something very valuable to offer to our society. And I think we need to adopt that position of offering to our society what we believe is for the good of the society.
Again, well said. I hear echoes of the St John Paul II, former Pope, who went through Polish communism, initially through Nazism, but his whole mantra was speak truth to culture and propose, don't impose. Archbishop Julian Porteous, I really appreciate you giving of your time today. I think you have given us some hope about a way forward in these challenging times, and I know that many of our viewers will be, like me, very appreciative of the voice you've been in our nation, so bold and so courageous to speak out. So thank you so much for being with us again today.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Pleasure to join you.